Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. It's Trevor Stockwell here, along with my guest for this episode, Lisa Marie Platske. Now, Lisa is an award-winning certified master coach and leadership expert, just the sort of person that I like to hang around with. She's also a speaker and an international best-selling author who so far has coached, trained, and mentored over 100,000 leaders around the globe. That's impressive. So we've definitely got something that we want to dig into and plumb her wisdom on this episode. But you'll know, being in business, that leadership is such a key element to success. Specifically, if you own a business or an entrepreneur, how often do you take a moment and just assess where you are, of how effective your leadership is? Well, thanks for joining us today. This is the episode where you can do just that. Lisa and I share a similar passion for helping leaders develop and grow to become all that they can be, the best version of themselves, so to speak. So I know it's going to be a great conversation. So welcome to the show, Lisa Marie Platske.
Thanks, Trevor. I'm so excited to be here. And I love that we share the same passion. Like, that's the part that I'm really excited about, so that it can be a fun dialogue between the two of us, each sharing what we've seen on our journeys.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the thing about potential, isn't it? Like, there isn't an end to potential, the way I see it, for human potential. And so we're all on the journey, we're all growing, but being able to help other people as well reach new heights, discover new things about themselves, or just lead better on the day-to-day stuff, I think is such a key thing. So lots I know from your experience that you can share with us to help us all improve our leadership. Maybe just share a little bit of your journey that's brought you to where you're able to have such a global impact.
Well, I grew up in a town that was sort of like a mid-sized town, and was raised by a single mom, which had such an incredible impact on me. Trevor, I didn't realize the degree of the impact until even just over the past few years, where I watched my mom work very hard for what I saw as very little, doing her best for my sister and myself so that we could have the things that mattered most, to what she saw as our long-term, our life progression. And as I watched my mom do this, I watched her say no to many of her dreams, and say no to the things that, in exchange for making a better life for my sister and I. And so it's the reason why I'm so passionate about leadership, in looking at it in terms of doing what you do best and not having to trade in pieces of your soul along the way for something that where you don't get to fully use your gifts and your abilities and your talents and your experiences. So it started when I was a little girl, and watching my mom, and from there, the leadership journey continued, not even realizing how important that was to me. Got into banking and then federal law enforcement, and loved that piece of the journey. And it really is the part of the journey that, what I would say, where leadership saved my life, where I recognized its value and its importance. And so this leadership journey has been something that, I have been on for a very long time, and has just been instrumental in contributing to my life with my friends and my family, and the people who I love most.
Yeah. So you never sort of grew up knowing that one day I'm gonna mentor, coach, train leaders around the world?
No, didn't have that. And it's such a great question, because there are people who I'm connected to who knew, when they were 5, they were going to be fill in the blanks. And I didn't have that. However, what I will say that I did have is, there used to be a talk show host in the United States that was on many years ago. His name was Merv Griffin, and he was at the early stages of reality television or talk show television more. And he had this TV show where he would bring on guests, and I was playing Connect Four with my sister, and it was in my grandparents' living room. My grandfather was watching the show. I had to be about 9 years old, and my grandfather said, "Someday that's going to be you, Lisa." And I was like, what is he talking about? And they were interviewing somebody who was a speaker who was on stage speaking to thousands of people. And he said, someday you're going to be speaking to thousands of people. And I thought, I'm 9. I don't know what the heck you're talking about. Go back to finishing my game. My grandfather had said from when I was very small, just that I had the ability to change the energy when I showed up in a room, and that there was something about me that I was going to be doing that was going to have influence and impact. So I always think back to that those conversations I had with him, and how, isn't it true that there's people that we meet in our journeys, Trevor, that they see us and they see us the way that they see the trajectory of where it is that we're going versus who we are in the moment. And I think that coaching does that. That's what great coaches are able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things, I think, it's the path of discovery, isn't it? The areas where you're strong, in some ways they leave clues, and when you look back, it makes a lot more sense than it did at any of those points necessarily of how you got to where you got. That, at least, I understand where you're coming from, because the journey is kind of similar in the sense of I didn't know while I was at school what I wanted to do and that sort of stuff, but it became more evident, partly, as you say, through other people, the input of other people, and just you gravitate towards certain things, don't you? So no, it's interesting. It is interesting. And you've had accolades from the White House, National Association of Female Executives, lots of others. So you've managed to kind of grow to the point where you're very influential in a lot of different organizations and businesses, which is really good. And it'd be really good to sort of tap into your wisdom about positioning. So as a business owner, entrepreneur, whatever the sphere is, leadership is such a key thing in the day-to-day, but also where you want to take your business, whatever it is, whatever field you're in. So how can you help the listeners, myself included as well, no doubt I can learn from you, position ourselves better in front of the people that we can influence the most positively?
I love this question, and I have no idea if I've ever been asked anything like this. So I really appreciate you asking this, because I believe that positioning is a key element in leadership, and that you are either positioning yourself or depositioning yourself every time you open your mouth. You're allowing people to see your brilliance or not. It goes back and forth, and we turn it on, we turn it off. And what I find in business is that oftentimes the opposite is taught, meaning what's taught is not positioning, even though it's spoken about it. So positioning was actually the terminology was first created by a gentleman. His name was Al Ries, and he wrote a book with a business partner in 1981 called The Battle for Your Mind, The Battle of Your Mind. And it was positioning. And the formal definition that he gave was that positioning is opening a window in your mind. That's what it is. And so it's the early stages of what I would call brain science, but brain science in terms of how we market ourselves, how people see us. And it was used in how he looked at it was in larger corporations, corporations like the Coca-Colas of the world, and those that were out there branding themselves. And how did they get marketplace positioning where somebody would choose them before somebody else? And when I started to do research on this, it came from a place of me failing Trevor. Like, it didn't come from a place of me going like, yay, I want to learn so much about how to do this. It came from a place where I was literally working in federal law enforcement, and I had been rewarded both working in banking and in school, as being somebody who was like the A+ student, somebody who was, who dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's and got it right. And so here I am, I show up in my federal law enforcement career, and the guys don't love working with me. They don't really want to work with me, and they don't take me really serious. And I'm going, I got a problem. I got a really big problem here. And so what am I going to do about it? And I decided to sign up for a leadership course. And at that leadership course, they gave us assessments. Like, I'm sure you use assessments, with clients. And here I am, they give me like, I don't know, 12, 15. I don't remember the number, but it was like this crazy number of assessments. They're assessing every part of like who I am as a leader. And one of the assessments was an assessment to measure what I would call interpersonal skills. And the assessment comes back, and we're in a circle of 25 leaders sitting around tables, and the instructor walks over to me and stands over top me and announces to the class that I had scored a 0.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. And she doesn't stop there. She continues and she says, if Lisa invites you to do something and you show up, she doesn't really want you to be there. And if you invite her to do something and she shows up, she's secretly wishing she was someplace else.
Okay.
And Trevor, it was painful. Like, it was a very big ouch. Like, is that really who I am? And nobody talked to me for the rest of the day. And I can even feel myself now, like the angst, when you have a memory that's like so painful. It wasn't a safe space for me to receive this feedback. And it took me, probably 2 weeks to sit down and go, okay, like, you might be smart and tough, you might be strong and right, but you, girl, in this career and in this field are going to be alone and dead. And unless you figure out how to connect and how to position yourself. And that's what launched the journey of me realizing how much that the walls that I had created, they were supposed to be safety barriers to keep anybody else from getting in and creating harm. And what they actually were doing were keeping people out in a way that didn't allow them to be able to see me. And so positioning was one of the areas where I began diving into connection and positioning, the research, reading everything I could about it and learning. And what happened for me was, in the end, fast forward, I ended up being the fastest promoted officer in my federal law enforcement agency. I ended up starting my business 17 years ago and using those same positioning tools and same positioning insights and steps and research to attract clients where people said it was just not possible your first year in business to be able to make that much money or to do the work that I was doing. And so positioning, you're right, is just, it's so, like, I can't say enough about how valuable it is. And so from a practical standpoint, what was interesting is one of the biggest pieces of positioning is that positioning is marrying humanity and expertise. And a lot of times people believe that if they talk about themselves, if they say things like, what you had shared with me about me and my bio, you've coached or trained over 100,000 leaders, that's positioning. It's actually not. It's not depositioning either. It's more of a neutral statement. Positioning happens when the humanity shows up. And so when you say, I've coached or trained over 100,000 leaders, and on that journey, there have been as many lows as highs. You bring the humanity in and you allow for positioning to show up as a trusted expert, because you're not in the arrogance of simply speaking about all the things that you do. People need to see others as human. And so there's a confusion there when talking about yourself in business. And how do you get the greater opportunities? And the greater opportunities come with curiosity when somebody is willing to be able to see you as a fellow human on their journey and open doors that otherwise would have been closed in any other way. So I'm just so excited. And let me pause there because I could go on with this, and you've got questions and you've got things to add. So let me just pause here. And yeah.
No, it's really good. I like what you said, because it's also, as you're saying it, I'm thinking, yeah, I would naturally refer people that I know, connect them with other people that I know, when I know that they're authentic, when I can trust them to the level where I know, I don't know everything about them, but I know they're real, they're honest, they're not kind of painting a picture of what they'd like to be, but actually can't back it up with substance. They're just being honest and authentic. And you're right, we're human. We all want connection. We all know that we're not perfect at everything. One of the things that I struggled with, first of all, kind of embracing leadership, was I assumed leaders had to know everything.
It's a big myth, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a huge myth in leadership, is that people, it's actually the number one myth in why people don't put themselves out as an expert, because it's like, well, I'm not the expert in everything. And it's like, you don't have to be the expert in everything. So I love you sharing that, because it's so true. And I get how it can trip up some of the most brilliant people in the world, and including me in the past, including me, because that's what I believe, that there's been so many books and misinformation on that keeps people from fully using all that they have. That's brilliant. Gosh, I mean, if I had to wait until I was going to get it all right, heavens, I'd sit in my house, so yeah.
Like a week before our deathbed or something, it's like, right, I've now learned enough I can impart to the world. It's like, but I just haven't got the energy now. It's just like, no, right? Yeah, we're all, a lot of it, I think, as well, what I'm learning more is there's like, everybody has gold, don't they? Everybody has something inside of them that is unique and valuable, and we discover each other's on the journey. It's not like, there are people further on the journey than us, which is good, because that's who can mentor us, that's who we can look to for influence and guidance in a lot of different ways, so we don't make the same mistakes they do. But it's also, you're right, we're all on the journey together to some extent, and we help each other. I think, like, I don't compete. I just, I play sports every now and again, so I understand the competitive edge within a game. If I'm going to play a game, I will try and beat you, because that makes more of the game. If I don't win, I don't care. Do you know what I mean? Just, that's one of my values, the way I've said it. So it frees me up from a lot of trying to become better than somebody else. Yes, I can learn and all the rest of it, and we should. But I think it's key, going back to what you were saying about positioning as well. Like, there's a lot of focus on branding and marketing, which is good. No problem with that. Businesses need to know how to sort of communicate who they are and what they offer. But the danger could be, and you sort of touched on this, that you lose the, I don't say intimacy, the humanity, I think, of the people. If you're a business owner, then people want to get to know you a little bit, because that's what they connect with, isn't it? We don't connect with a product the same level that we connect with an individual. So I think it's such a key point. But what have you said?
Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
No, it's because people follow the person first, and then they follow what they do. They oftentimes, that even when we look at organizations and bigger companies, there are people who won't buy a product if they find that there's some sort of like, why do stocks go down when there's some sort of scandal or when there's something? It's because nobody wants to be duped or, you know, be engaged in some, I should say nobody, but and it's I would say the majority of humans they want to engage in something that's highly ethical and that feels good and that's making a contribution.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say would be some of the pitfalls that you've seen or the mistakes that people make, as well as the not being authentic enough in positioning their business, their product, service, whatever it is? Any other things that for the people that you've helped, what are the other things that you've helped them overcome to better position and communicate who they are, and what they offer?
There's two things that come to mind. And so one is a increase in curiosity, like curiosity in everything, you know, curiosity in how someone got started and what they're doing and how their day is and what they're excited about and what they're working on and what's most important to them. And it's, you know, when you love and you're passionate about what you're doing, you want to share it. And so it can be hard to stop and pause and ask someone else what theirs, you know, be in that curiosity because you want to share so much. So I would say like that's one of the really important pieces to being able to unlock that positioning tool. And the second part is positioning yourself as a trusted expert is about what you say, who you say it to, how you say it, when you say it. It's all of those components. And so there is a certain way that you'll hear people in business speak about having your elevator pitch, and no one wants to be pitched to. And so ditching the pitch and understanding that positioning statements and stories they're a way of speaking that involves both bringing in that humanity and bringing in the experience and sharing it in a way that allows people to see the best of who you are. And so what I find is that most people shy away from sharing anything that might have them negatively impact on the you know, in our conversation. You know, I don't want to share with you the zero story. Like I'd rather skip over that. I'd rather say, you know, like, here's the magical thing that happened, but that's true. And I would rather share that life growing up wasn't so hard and my mom didn't struggle, right? Like I wish that were perhaps a bit different. And those are the pieces where if I were to bring those in, and I'm to bring those in a positioning statement versus a pitch, and it might sound something like this, Trevor, you would experience me differently. And so those can be stories, but even in a statement, if I was going into interview and let's say there was a position that I wanted, and it was, you know, with a client, when I say something and I say, like, for example, in 2017, I was recognized by the International Association for Women as one of the top 100 women making a difference in the world. And what's so humbling about that is when I consider the amount of mistakes that I've made in business, to receive that recognition it is truly an honor. And my desire when I go out and speak is to share as many of the things that I've gotten wrong as the things that I've gotten right. And so why I say to you that that's more of a positioning statement is because the invitation, every time we do that, to not only get curious about somebody else, but then to invite in somebody else to become vulnerable in our presence, I think is one of the greatest gifts that we can give humanity. And that's what positioning is about. And so to do that, you open doors because you become so magnetic, because people get to experience the real you, not the many layers that the world has created and the many masks um, that I think have leaders sometimes be unrecognizable
Yeah.
in the public versus what's behind the curtain. So, that for me, those two pieces are really critical. The curiosity and the writing statements, not from a pitch place, but from a heart-centered humanity expertise place.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. Absolutely. Yeah. Totally agree with you on that. Let's just dig into a little bit. We're running through time here, as good as this is, but I also just wanted to maybe scratch the surface with regards to the 3 V's approach that you help leaders with. So do you want to sort of share a little bit about what they are?
Yeah, sure. So after I got out of law enforcement and decided to launch my own business, I wanted a shortcut. I was like, okay, so how do I do this? And so I started to interview leaders and find out a bit about, like, what do all of the best leaders do? And I came up with 7 pillars of leadership. And these 7 pillars of leadership I've used in my Upside Summit, I've used in my online trainings, I've used in my coaching programs. And several years ago, I was like, well, what in those pillars, what are the things that make the leaders that are like the biggest risk takers, the ones that are the most courageous, the ones that things just seem to work out, and you go, how did they get that to pull, like, how did they pull that off? That's just, it's incredible. I mean, you ever meet somebody like that where it's like every time they touch something? And so I call these people the most courageous leaders. Like, they're the courageous leaders. And there are 3 elements to courageous leadership, and those are those 3 V's. And the 3 V's are vision, vulnerability, and voice. And so, vision is having the courage to have a bold vision. Vulnerability is to be vulnerable. And voice is all around taking a stand for what matters most and using your voice in whatever stand that is that you want to take. And I find that as I started to do the research, because I really do, I like both the art and science of leadership. I like the fact that, we each have our own way of expressing it. And at the same time, there's a certain scientific elements to it. And so I would hear people talk about vision all the time and go like, look, I mean, I grew up with a single mom, and we didn't talk about vision other than to the eye doctor. Like, it wasn't like, it was like, what's your vision? And what I realized is that the hidden component to vision is clarity, like having such crystal clarity. And there's reasons why, I attracted sponsors in my business, and why I attracted opportunities was this, I have this clarity wheel, this wheel of clarity that I go through, that I feel is incredibly important. And then vulnerability, that the hidden superpower in there is forgiveness, because you can't get to, vulnerability is not a marketing tactic. You either learn how to do it well or not. And the only way to do that is through the door of forgiveness. And voice's hidden superpower, in order to be able to access it and be able to take a stand, because people get behind where your heart lies, not your knowledge. That was a little trickier. And I found that it was generosity. So there are these hidden engines that, when turned on, those courageous leaders have things happen that are so far beyond, they're the billion-dollar enterprises that just go like, wow, and less hours and more opportunities showing up. And so it was very interesting to do the research.
Yeah.
And then to watch my clients implement it, like Trevor, to watch them utilize it and get their own results from it. Like, wow, exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you just going briefly back to the vulnerability part of it, that you invite other people. When you're vulnerable, you invite other people to open up as well. It's like that's the essence of leadership, isn't it? We set the atmosphere in a room, in an organization, within a team, in how authentic we are, in how we lead ourselves, how we communicate to other people, how we relate to other people, and how we, where appropriate, are vulnerable about mistakes we've made, or not feeling 100% here, really need to focus, or whatever the scenario is. And that takes a level of security in who you are, regardless
Yes,
of your position, doesn't it, within the
yes.
business? Go on, I thought you were going to say something. Sorry.
Oh, I'm excited. I was loving what you were saying. I wanted to, like, cheer you on. Yes, share
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and that, like, if you're leading a team, people know when you're not firing on all cylinders 100% of the time. And if you try and hide it or cover it over, it just, what are you teaching them to do when they're not feeling well? Ideally, you're leading a team and they've got an off day. You want to know they've got an off day so you can help them, bring other resources in, bring other people around to support, whatever the scenario might be. But if all they see is the leader covering it up, maybe being a bit grumpy or something like that, and shutting themselves away, it's like they're going to follow suit when it's their turn, and that's just not helpful. So I like what you say, like setting the whole atmosphere in the vision side of it. Are we communicating vision in a way that makes sense to the people that we're leading? Is it far enough out there that it does take courage and we move out of our sort of comfort zone, or are we just playing it safe and almost drawing the vision back to, well, I think this is, we can do this, so let's just aim for that? It's like, no, you're never going to get the best out of yourself or other people, are you, if you've got a small vision? You have to have something to aim for. It's just the way we're wired, isn't it? The way we're created. We like to stretch ourselves to the point. We don't like to start to stretch ourselves, but once we're stretching, I think something else kicks in inside, and there's just an extra energy that comes. So I think that's really good. And then the voice side of it as well. Yeah, are you actually communicating what you believe, what you're convicted on, as to what's important within the organization, the company, the product, whatever it is you're providing? It's communicating that in a way that makes sense. You use your customer's language as well, but it comes from your own conviction on it, rather than just, well, this is the buzzword at the moment, so we need to adopt that, let's try and be like that. It's like, well, it doesn't always work like that, does it? So I love what you're saying, and it makes perfect sense. And I think it's also a lot of what you're sharing here, they're all traps that we can fall into at any point within business, because of the influences around us, because of marketing, and we look at other people and all what they're doing and stuff. But it's coming back to, yeah, but what's right for me, isn't it? What's the path that I should take in how
I love that. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you help people do that through lots of different ways. Let's just, before, as we wrap this up, how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way? Because no doubt they'll want to find out more about your coaching and about different things that you do. So head to the website. Is that the best place?
Best place to find me, upsidethinking.com. Yep. UPSIDE and the word thinking, THINKING.com. And website, you can set up some time to have a chat with me. You can find some resources on there. There's thousands of articles and information that's has weekly challenges, not daily, weekly challenges. So there's lots of information there.
Yeah, that's good. We didn't actually touch on any of your books either, because you've written several books, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. I didn't, much like what you shared earlier. I've written 7 books. They've been international bestsellers in 5 countries. There's, some of them have, just had a life of their own, and it was never anything where I woke up and went, yes, I want to be an author. It was just, there was a need. And so I wrote down my thoughts. There was a need and I wrote down my thoughts. And so, that's another piece, is that everybody has genius in them. And so, you know, you talk about positioning, you know, what a great way to be able to put yourself out there and share the highs and the lows and the journey, as other than writing articles or books or commenting on people's blog posts. So it's a great way to be able to do that. And I believe every leader should do that, because once again, that's that third V, like you're using your voice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I like that. So at least a couple of them are available on Amazon, aren't they? Not that we sponsor Amazon, although if Jeff is listening and he'd like to sponsor the show, we certainly have a conversation. But yeah, that's one of the best places, or as you said, via your website, that people can look through that as well. And yeah,
I send them to people, you know, that's, you know, so somebody wants something, I'm always happy to send them.
Yeah,
I've got, you know, some are online only, some are hard copy, and
perfect. Okay, no, that's good. You make it easy for people to grasp the intricacies of positioning, I would say, within a business. Lots more to it, I know. We have only touched the surface, but what you've shared, there's plenty for us to work on and think about. Throw in the mix of what we're doing in our businesses and how we're, you know, planning for the future or interacting with people. So lots that we can get people thinking about and taking action, because we like everyone that's listening to take action. Otherwise it becomes a static message and it doesn't do us any good. We always encourage people to take action. So thank you for what you've shared. I definitely think you should come back at some point, because time just goes too fast. Maybe we'll dig into some of the books or something. That would be good.
Oh, thank you, Trevor. I mean, it's such a joy, because you have such an understanding of the leadership world and what that takes to really be clear in vision and in vulnerability and voice. And these aren't marketing tactics, like these are real world techniques where there have been real results that have been what I would consider stratospheric success for many of my clients, and you would say the same thing of yours. And so I think leadership is something that not only did it save my life, but it's something that, you know, without it, you know, it's really hard to make a difference. And you alluded to something earlier, which I think is so important to shine light on, and that is that leadership is not an external. I thought in the beginning it was all about other people, but leadership is an internal game. Like you've got to figure out you can't get to clarity. You can't get to authenticity or vulnerability or vision. You can't get to any of those things unless you actually are really clear about who you are, what you want, and why it matters. So exquisite. I so appreciate the gift of your allowing me to be here and the thoughtful questions that you presented.
No, it's brilliant. It is brilliant. Yeah, like we never switch off leadership, do we? It's like it's not something we put on in the morning and then, you know, take off at night. It's just it's who we are. Everybody's a leader, I think, in one way or another, to some extent, with influence with other people. And the better that we understand and learn from other people like yourself, it's a no-brainer from my perspective. We get sharper by the people we hang around, the people we chat to, and well done for everybody listening as well, for tuning in, for catching this episode. Lots of stuff that we can all take in to improve ourselves and our leadership, which is going to benefit everybody we lead and influence with as well. So brilliant. There's a link below to your website, so for everybody that's listening, definitely check out Lisa's website, find out, have a conversation with her, find out how you can connect and work together going forwards. She can definitely help you in lots of different ways. Until you return and we pick up this conversation again, thank you for your time today. It's been really good. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And for everybody listening, yes, we will catch you next time.